Welcome back to Horn Takes, your Texas football and baseball talk destination. I am Sean Redfern. It is Thursday. That is a Longhorn Friday to me. Anyway, I hope it's a Longhorn Friday to you. We're getting close to the end of the week, getting close to the weekend, which means we get some more college football this weekend. Pretty decent slate of games this weekend, I think. There's a lot of games that could have a lot of impact on not only the playoffs, but certainly those conference championship games. So it'll be an interesting weekend to sit back, watch some college football. I was kicking around the idea of just jetting off to the Kentucky game this weekend down in Austin. We gave a bunch of tickets away earlier this year as part of promotion to get some people checking out the YouTube channel. Didn't quite work out the way we had hoped, but we gave away tickets nonetheless. So I didn't have my Kentucky tickets, but I was going to buy one. I was going to head down. We didn't plan a trip. We're like 5.5, 6 hours away from Austin, so we have to plan to go to a college football game down in Austin, and we just didn't do it. But I think I'm not going to do it. It's too close to the holidays. I don't have enough time to get back and do what I need to do, so I think I'm going to be watching from a distance this Saturday. I was going to head down there and meet Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered. Been on his show. He's been on mine. But I haven't met him face to face yet, so that was going to be cool. But I guess it'll just have to wait. I'm going to try to go to SEC Media Days next year. I'm sure he will definitely be there for that. They were there this year, so I don't see why they wouldn't be there again. So we'll check that out and see. We'll get a chance to meet Chris, and it'll be a good time, man. Chris is a good dude. Knows a lot about sports. I like his content. If you guys don't know who SEC Unfiltered is or Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered, those guys, Dave Shoemate, they do a really good job. Cole Thompson, they do a really good, or is it Thompson or Tom? I think it's Thompson. They do a really good job of SEC content. So you should check those guys out for sure. Today we're going to do Trace Otra Games picks. Week 13. We're doing really good so far this season. We'll see if we can't keep it up. And then we'll do the deep dive on this Kentucky defense. Pretty damn good defense, folks. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. If you just like to listen to podcasts, we welcome you to do so at the following places: Apple Podcast, iHeart Podcast, Spotify Podcasts. Basically, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you should be able to find us. Just search Horn Takes Podcast. We encourage you to do that, but we would really encourage you to go over to the YouTube channel, because if you just listen, you're going to miss some video stuff that I've been doing lately, and I will continue to do during football season. I'll probably even, man, you know what? I'll do some video stuff during baseball. I will completely embarrass myself with my lack of understanding of the game of baseball, but I'll do it for you guys because I love you guys. If you don't have access to any of those podcast places, you can always get on the World Wide Web. Go to your web browser, type in horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. Find all the episodes there as well. Trace Ultra Games picks for week 13. Man, like I said, some pretty interesting games. There was too many for us to pick, and I'm not gonna spend like 2 hours going through my picks to do multiple games, but there were a lot of games to choose from this weekend. I feel like these are the ones that I like the most. Number 5, Indiana at number 2, Ohio State. This one kicks off at 11 a.m. on Fox. Ohio State, a 13.5-point favorite in this one. To me, this is a de facto playoff game for both teams. Indiana's 10-0, 7-0 in the Big, trying to stay locked into the other big title spot. And then you got Ohio State. They're 9-1, 6-1 in the Big. The only loss on the road to Oregon, really close game. And they're trying to advance to that big title game with a head-to-head win over Indiana. If Ohio State beats Indiana, the rest of the season goes as planned for both teams. They'll both have the same record. They both have the same record in conference. Ohio State will get that second spot in the Big Championship due to a head-to-head win over Indiana. I think Indiana possibly out of a playoff spot with a loss today. And I think that's absolutely a brand thing. I mean, I think there's a whole lot of talk every time these playoff rankings come out about who should be where and why is this team here and da-da-da. Their strength of schedule sucks. And you know what? Indiana is 10-0. The goal of football is to win games, folks, not have close losses. So anytime someone starts arguing with you about, oh, yeah, we lost 2 games, but they were against these 2 really good teams, just tell them to shut up, because the goal of football is to win games, not have close losses. There is no fucking column on any stat sheet anywhere that says close losses and has a number in it that says this is how many close losses you had. Football is about winning. And sure, I am not suggesting that teams should go out and schedule a bunch of patsies just so they can win football games. When you start involving humans and you start talking about how do we rank these teams, of course humans are going to throw their bias in there. And it's going to be who they perceive to be good and how teams have done against those teams that are perceived to be good. And it's a brand thing as well, and that's why Indiana's going to suffer. And listen, I'm not here to like white knight Indiana. I'm just saying they're 10-0 in a major conference. If they figure out a way to beat Ohio State this weekend, people just need to shut up. And if you're a 2-loss team and you're pissing and moaning about your ability to get into the playoff, just shut up. You lost your chance to control your own destiny into the playoff. If you get in, great. Some of them will, some of them won't. But if you're a 2-loss team, you don't have shit to say about any other team that has more wins than you and less losses than you. The game of football, I'll say it for the third time in this short show, the goal is to win games, not have close losses. So enough of that shit. Let's get back to Indiana, back to TOSU. Offensively, these teams very, very evenly matched. I think Indiana has a slight edge in every major category except for rushing offense. And then you look at these teams defensively, statistically, they're 2 of the best teams in the country. They're second and third ranked in total defense. Ohio State number 2, Indiana number 3. Indiana a little bit better against the run, a little worse against the pass than Ohio State. And both these teams really good in scoring defense as well, first and seventh in scoring defense respectfully in the country. I look at this game, man, and I know it's Indiana. And I know like their schedule is not a gauntlet. It's not a very powerful schedule. I think they're got the 85th ranked schedule or something like. Maybe it's even worse than that. I think it's actually in the hundreds. I think Notre Dame's is 85th ranked. So it's not a tough schedule, but they're 10-0. And if you look at some common opponents, they absolutely destroyed Nebraska. And I know the transitive property doesn't work, but it's really all we have to go on. Unless you just want to go, well, Ohio State's recruited really well. Indiana hasn't. Ohio State is traditionally a good team. Indiana's not. So I think Ohio State's going to win. To me, that's just as absurd. It's actually way more absurd than looking at a game against a common opponent and saying transitive property. Neither of them are perfect, obviously. Ohio State struggled with Nebraska. Indiana, I won't say what I want to say, but they beat them bad. So I think Ohio State being a 13.5 point favorite, just kind of odd to me. I don't, you look at Ohio State, traditionally they've had really, really good quarterbacks. I don't think Will Howard is a really, really good quarterback. I think he's serviceable. I think he can bus drive for you, but he's not a guy that's going to go like just toss the ball all over the place for 400 plus yards, 5 touch. He's not that guy. He is not CJ Stroud. This game's at the shoe, which I think makes it a lot tougher on Indiana. But I don't think. I mean, you look at Sig, man. He's a guy. He's just a like no nonsense, basic kind of dude. Go do the fundamental things, play hard, be tough, and you win football. I don't think. I don't see playing this game away from home being a problem for Indiana. If they get dumped on, it'll be because they got dumped on. I don't. I don't think the crowd at the shoe is going to intimidate them at all. It's going to be crazy, folks, but I'm going to do. I like Indiana on the road to stay alive with the upset over Ohio State University, and I think It's going to be a really, really close game. And I think Indiana pulls it out late. Indiana 24-23 over Ohio State. Ohio State's got some injuries right now. They're struggling on the offensive line with injuries, and I saw where their center just went down with an Achilles injury this week in practice. So I don't know the extent of the injuries, but I think they've had several guys banged up, maybe a couple out. We'll see. And if that happens, folks, like again, what happens to all these narratives? Everybody keeps talking about no way an SEC three loss or an SEC runner up doesn't make the playoff. Well, what if that SEC runner up is a 3-loss team? You going to put them in over a 11-0 Indiana team or an Indiana team that goes to the Big 10 championship and loses to Oregon? Is that what we're going to do? I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out. And that's the other thing. Every single week this comes out and everybody loses their damn mind. Folks, it ain't the final playoff ranking. There's no, like, it'll all kind of work itself out. It always does. You got Aggies pissing and moaning about where they're ranked. Dude, you get a chance to play Texas. If Texas wins this weekend, you get a chance to play a top 5 Texas team at home and, again, prove that you deserve to be up there in that spot. You get a chance to be the number 1 seed in the SEC championship game, provided you beat Auburn this weekend. It all works out. Quit arguing about this shit. And if you are going to argue about it, for God's sake, stop saying, oh, but they got the 2 best losses in the SEC. Or those 2 losses they have are to really, really tough teams. Nobody gives a fuck about losses. You don't see Texas running around talking about, oh, but our only loss is to Georgia. It's a loss. There's no positive to losing. You lost. You didn't meet the goal of winning. Next game, number 14, BYU at number 21, Arizona State, 2:30 on ESPN. Arizona State, the favorite. I'm surprised by that, too. Before last week, I don't think anyone expected this one to be sort of a Big 12 title game playoff matchup, and that's what it is. BYU loss and an Arizona State win in Manhattan. Make it that. Make it so. BYU 9-1, 6-1 in Big 12. Trying to hold on to that top spot in the Big 12. Arizona State, by way of that upset against Kansas State last week, 8-2, 5-2 in the Big 12. Trying to stay tied with Colorado. Arizona State winning this game doesn't necessarily put them in the Big 12 title game. But actually, maybe it does. Maybe they would get in over BYU, I would think, via head-to-head if they both continue to win. Not sure of the Big 12 rules, what that looks like. I know neither one of these teams play Colorado, so whatever happens, they don't get a chance to go mess up Colorado or get a bump because they beat Colorado, anything like that. This is another really evenly matched game from an offensive perspective. Arizona State, a little bit more run heavy. BYU, a little bit more pass heavy. BYU is slightly statistically better on defense. I think the big matchup of the game for me, the one that's going to determine this one, that Arizona State rushing attack against that BYU rush defense. Which one of those wins, I think, is going to determine who wins this game. I like BYU to go on the road, bounce back from the loss, find a way to win that game, stay on top of the Big 12. I got BYU 27, Arizona State 24. Game number 3, number 9, Ole Miss at Florida. Now, I could have picked a lot of different SEC games. I could have went with that Auburn Aggie game. There's some people out there that are just convinced that Alabama is going to go into Norman and Oklahoma is going to somehow find a way to beat them. That I can't see that happening. I honestly cannot see anything happening but Alabama just absolutely trucks Oklahoma at home. Stranger things have happened, obviously. But I will. That might be the shocker of the year if Oklahoma figures out a way to win that one. But I like this one because I think this one actually there's a shot for an upset here. It's 11 a.m. kick, ABC, ESPN Plus. Ole Miss a 10.5-point favorite. Ole Miss with everything to play for. They're trying to stay in the chase for that SEC title game, stay in the chase for a playoff berth. You look at Florida, at least along the lines of playoffs and SEC, they got nothing to play for. They're playing to maybe be 500 or above in SEC play this season. But I think Florida's got DJ Lagway back, and they're coming off that win over LSU. They got a little bit of momentum. Keys to this one for me: can Ole Miss get up for a road game in the Swamp after they had a bye and they're coming off of a home win against Georgia headed into that bye? Can they mentally get prepared to go on the road? No, I don't think the Swamp is like some crazy hard place to play. And Florida, obviously not that impressive on the season. But that might play to Florida's advantage and to Ole Miss's disadvantage. Can they get ready to go play that? I mean, their head coach, Lane Kiffin, is not like the most reverent guy. I could definitely see Lane Kiffin kind of being in ass grabbing mode all week instead of being focused on being the coach on Saturday. Because I just don't think that guy's very mature. I mean, we're talking about the same guy, and I'll never stop talking about this because it was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in a football game. They played a bowl game against Texas Tech a couple years ago, and he missed on a fourth down conversion early in that game. And they ran fourth down conversions, and it didn't matter what the down and distance was. He just completely went on tilt, and he was not focused on anything other than picking up a fourth down until they got one. And it was like the second quarter before they got one. And by that point, Texas Tech already had a big lead on them, and they could not dig out from under that. He lost the game literally because his goal for the rest of the game was to get a fourth down conversion. Bizarre. But I think that's Lane Kiffin. I think you got to take the good with the bad. He's a little jacked up in the head, I think. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he's in fuck off mode right now. Florida team, to me, a lot like this Kentucky team Texas is about to play, except I think they have more firepower on offense. So can the Florida defense put in a Kentucky-like performance against Ole Miss like we saw early in the season when Kentucky went in there to the SIP and beat Ole Miss? I think another key is who does the least amount of stupid shit in this game. We just talked about Lane Kiffin. But Ole Miss, they don't turn the ball over a lot this year. Florida does. Florida isn't wildly penalized. Ole Miss is one of the worst in the country at taking penalties. I think Florida has a shot here. I just don't think it's a big one. I watched this Texas offense be able to get a lot of big plays down the field against this Florida defense. And I think that's one of the tenets of the Ole Miss offense is let's get the ball down the field. We saw what they did against Arkansas. I think unless Florida can find a way to dial up a lot of pressure on Dart and just keep him running for his life for most of the game, I think Ole Miss is going to get it done, but I think it's going to be fairly close. I got Ole Miss 31, Florida 23. I think this week of Trace Otra games, probably the most unconfident week of picks I've had. We could go 0-3. Or we could go 3-0 and shock the world, baby. That's what we're going to try to do. Let's get that into the deep dive on this Kentucky defense. Unlike the Kentucky offense, Brad White's Kentucky defense, quietly one of the better defenses in the country. They're led by senior linebacker Jamin Dumas Johnson. He leads the Wildcats in tackles with 54. He's got 7 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, an interception, a QB hurry, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery. The rap sheet is long on Mr. Johnson. I believe he's a Georgia transfer. He's a tank, and he's back from injury this week. Senior edge J.J. Weaver leads the Wildcats in sacks with 5. He's got 4 QB hurries, a pass breakup, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery. He is listed as probable this week, whereas last week I think he was out. I think they were missing a lot of folks last game. Junior Jordan Lovett and junior J.Q. Hardaway tied for the lead in interceptions on this Kentucky team at 2. Lovett is the Wildcats' second leading tackler. He's got 52 stops. Guys, the back end of this defense has a lot of size and length. They're all 6 foot or more. Hardaway and sophomore DJ Waller, 6'3". Waller's out this week. Lovett coming in at 6'2", so they are big guys. They're all right around 200, some of them over 200. Ty Bryant, Zion Childress, they're the babies. They're only 6 feet. But that is a big secondary. The inside linebackers, we said it. Dumas Johnson is a tank. He's 6'1", 245 pounds. The Eric Jackson, 6'1", 244-pounder, he's going to be out this week as well. So they're missing quite a bit of guys or have some guys that are questionable on the defense headed into this game. J.J. Weaver, really imposing guys, 6'5", 255 pounds. And then you got Trevon Ribka, senior. He's 6'4", 284 coming off the other edge. He's got 29 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 QB hurries, 1 pass breakup. This defense, absolutely massive in the middle. Nose tackle Keyshawn Silver, 6'4", 336. And then you got big defensive tackle Deion Walker, 6'6", 345. They get him back from injury this week. So those are your main guys on this Wildcat defense. Let's look at them a little statistically. They're pretty good. They come in ranked 29th in total defense, giving up 321 yards per game. They're ranked 28th in pass defense, giving up 188 through the air. That's good. 54th in rush defense, giving up 133 on the ground. They are 21st in scoring defense, only allowing 19 points a game. 45th in sacks. They've got 23 sacks, though. They are 68th in turnovers gained with only 13. So they're not a big take the ball away team. They're ranked 71st in third down defense. Teams convert just a tick under 40% of the time on them. So I think that's a place where Texas kind of has an advantage. Hopefully. They didn't do well at all last week against Arkansas on third down. And then in the red zone, they're 6th. Teams only convert 69% of the time, and that is outstanding. So you look at that Texas offense, they're 69th, only converting 84% of the time in the red zone. The red zone could be a key in this game. Kentucky defense really, really tough there. Texas offense, not so great. I think the sacks area is another area where that could kind of sway how the game goes. Kentucky really good at getting to the quarterback. Texas, not terrible. They're about middle of the road in the country giving up sacks. And in the SEC, it's been really rough. They've given up 20 sacks so far this season, which I guess isn't awful, but it's not great either. I think if you're looking at this Texas offense and kind of your opportunity to attack, and we'll talk more about this later. We'll get into the details of why. I think your rushing game is where you can take advantage of this Kentucky defense. Let's check tape. It is a veteran group. They only got 2 underclassmen starters, and That is not including the guys that are out. So I don't know who will replace those guys or what their classification is. This Kentucky defense, they're going to give you kind of the same nickel look that a lot of teams go with these days, but they will go to that three-man look with a dime look behind it. It's not exactly the same thing that Arkansas did to Texas most of the game last week, but it's very, very similar. For the quarterback, it's going to look a lot the same. They do throw multiple coverages. They play a lot of cover three in passing situations. Don't confuse cover three with three deep safeties. Not exactly the same thing. But they will do a lot of three deep safeties. They're really multiple. They'll throw a lot of different stuff at you, a lot like the offense will. The Kentucky offense plays out of a lot of formations, a lot of different looks. The defense will do the same thing. I don't know if they will against Texas, but they are capable and they've done it to other teams. I decided to go with Ole Miss again from a defense against offense perspective. I think Ole Miss is the closest thing you're going to find offensively to Texas. Probably some of the things they want to do. And conversely, that Ole Miss defense is probably the closest thing you would see athletically and all that to the Texas defense. So that's kind of why I chose Ole Miss. I know it's an older game. I just thought it would be more comparable. All right, on this first play, they're in a three-down lineman look, folks. If you watched this Arkansas game last week, you saw this. Here's where they're a little different. There's two linebackers in this look, so they're more running like a three-down lineman, two linebackers, and six DB look. Arkansas really kind of did three down linemen. There was a linebacker in the middle. They took out that other linebacker or split him out wide enough where he was more or less like a rover type position. So I think this is a look that we might see a lot. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with their other starting linebacker out. Do they bring in another linebacker to run this same exact look, or do they bring in another defensive back? We'll have to find out. But I'm sure they will see this three down look. They're going to be playing quarters, and watch quarters. There's just not a lot of room to throw the ball. You're going to see those cornerbacks bail. You're going to see those safeties bail at the snap. Everybody's bailing. They're playing quarters. Not a lot of room, but if you have time, you can find some room. But you got to be decisive with the football. You got to get it out quickly. And that's what Jackson Dart did right there for a really nice game. Quinn, you were certainly capable of doing that. You can't see him, but here you got three down linemen. You got a linebacker. I believe that's a linebacker. Walked up on. That may be an edge guy. He may just be standing up. But they're definitely in a three deep look. And it just looks a little bit different than what we saw against Arkansas because Ole Miss is kind of bunched up there at the line of scrimmage. They got a really tight set instead of a four wide spread set. But you can't see him on the screen. There is a deep safety right down that hash that's on the top side of the screen there. You might see his foot once we get going. But Kentucky gets a lot of pressure really quick up the middle. They cause Dart to scramble out, and he goes down for just a very short gain. So this Kentucky defensive front, pretty good getting to the quarterback, even with three. That'll be something to watch for. If they can continue to get pressure with three, they're not going to get out of that three-man look because they can have more guys back to make it harder for Quinn Ewers to find guys down the field. Next play, we got that quarters look again. Look how far off those cornerbacks are playing. You got your two deep safeties. They're all just kind of going to bail into zones. Dart's going to have some time, and he's going to throw this one into some heavy traffic. Getting the ball down the field this weekend is not going to be easy. I don't think it's going to be something that we see a whole lot of successfully by Texas unless they can get Kentucky out of those looks and get them into some man-to-man looks because they're running the ball so well. That's going to be the key to me. This right here, good look to run the football against. You got four 4 guys on the line of scrimmage. You got one linebacker in the middle, and the other one sort of shifted out over that trips look. So this should be a look that Texas can take advantage of. But I want you to watch Johnson, that middle linebacker from Kentucky. Really outstanding. He does an absolute great job diagnosing this, getting in there, avoiding getting blocked, making a play just a couple yards down the field. He's an absolute stud. They will have to get a hat on that guy to run the ball successfully on Saturday for absolute sure. One thing you will see out of this Kentucky defense, because they play quarters, because they play cover 3 a lot, you're going to see a lot of soft coverage on the edge. That's a good thing for this Texas Longhorn offense and them wanting to get the ball out quick to wide receivers. Watch Ole Miss do it here. Got to get a block, got to get a miss, and they do, and they get up the field for a nice little gain. That's something Texas does a whole lot. They do it to everybody. So it'll be interesting to see if Kentucky plays back on those coverages like that or if they creep that line of scrimmage a little more in the same types of coverage looks. Wide receiver is going to have to do a good job maintaining blocks because those blocks are going to take a long time. They're going to have to hold them for a while because they're playing off so soft. We get a nickel look here on this next play, but then Kentucky's going to bring pressure from the linebacker, and there's going to be playing zone behind it. So there's going to watch what Dart does. There'll be opportunities for Quinn Ewers if he can avoid pressure, step up in the pocket, navigate all that mess. He's going to be able to find guys down the field for big gains. Watch this play by Ole Miss. There comes the pressure. He steps up away from it, gets the ball off, wide open right in the middle of the field. It's all about avoiding that initial pressure, finding yourself again, looking downfield and finding a guy and getting the ball delivered. It's something that Quinn hasn't been great at this year. So, again, I think another key, when Kentucky does get pressure, how does Quinn handle that? Is he able to get up in the pocket and find somebody down the field or maybe take it for a few yards himself? Something I noticed real quick on the very next play of this game, watch these Kentucky guys just barely making it back down the field. Ole Miss ain't going to wait for them. They're going to snap it while they're standing up. They're still offsides and running in for a touchdown. So, to me, that's very telling. It's a big interior. We talked about that earlier. You get a few plays on those guys and go a little quick on those guys, they're going to be wore out. And so I think Sark's going to want to pick his spots to substitute very carefully. Sark likes to sub a lot of guys in and out. I think that's great. I also think you give them a chance to substitute. Maybe what we'll see, especially if we kind of get them on the run, you want to keep them on the run, right? We might see Sark a little less substitute happy this week. And I think he'll want to pick his spots. So just something I observed. I don't know if that's an everyday. Big dudes just can't run. Big dudes just aren't running 40 yards. They're not in a hurry. We talked the last couple weeks about linebackers in the play action game. These Kentucky linebackers do a really good job not biting out on the run fake. Watch them. We get a nice little run fake right there. They both just stay put and then they drop into their zones. Note to Sark, the linebackers don't attack the run. If they're lined up 5 yards off the ball like that in a 3-man look, just like Arkansas did, hey, let's run the ball. Let's make them come up. Let's make them get out of that 3-man look. Let's force those guys to get out of that balloon coverage look and do a little man-to-man action because they know they can't stop the run. Final thoughts on this Kentucky defense. What makes this group so good to me is they're really good at forcing you to move the ball down the field in small chunks. They're huge up front. That means they can have less bodies in the middle, and they can still take up a lot of space with those bodies. That allows them to slow down that run, and they can put a lot more bodies on the back end of the defense to make it tough on you in the passing game. They did it to Ole Miss. It worked to perfection. They did the exact same thing to Ole Miss that Arkansas did to Texas, and it worked, and they won the game. The only difference is Arkansas couldn't get it done. Most offenses struggle to maintain long drives without hitting big plays. And Kentucky's MO, we ain't letting you get a big play. Most offensive coaches are way too impatient to try without hitting big plays. Steve Sarkisian's one of those guys. Texas fans, you're not going to like this. They're going to try to take the deep ball away. They're going to run a 3-man front. There's going to be a bunch of picket fence zone behind it. And they're going to absolute dare Texas to run the ball, just like Arkansas did. And if Texas doesn't do it, we're going to see the exact same kind of low-scoring game that we saw against Arkansas. This group, again, gets really good pressure, even with 3 guys. I think they're a better defense than the Arkansas defense that just held Texas to 20 on Saturday. Big up front, big on the back end, makes those throwing lanes even tougher. It's a really good defense. They don't have a ton of depth. It'll be interesting to see how having those few guys out really affects them in this game. There is the deep dive on the Kentucky defense. We'll be back Friday with 4 keys and a prediction. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. Give us a subscribe. Give us a follow. Won't cost you guys a thing, but we sure appreciate the support. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. Thanks to all of you guys out there that watch the show. Follow us on Twitter. Check us out on TikTok. We sure do appreciate it, man. You guys don't know. It's great to see you guys out at football games. It's great to have conversations with you. You guys, we're almost to the weekend. We're almost to college football. Stay the course. Get hooked.